present to you Levente Laszlo, who is a recent PhD graduate from Eötvös University, and he has been studying for some years now Greek and Byzantine astrological materials, which he'll present for us today. A section. So, Levente, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Luis. Thank you. So the title of my presentation is going to be some astrological practices in light of the horoscopes of the Emperor Zeno's anonymous astrologer. Yes, it was hard to say it in one sentence. Yeah. So first of all, I should tell you who this Emperor Zeno's anonymous astrologer and his horoscopes were, and then I will turn to the question of his astrological practices. Yeah. So I'm going to actually the title is not exact, not very precise, because I should have written the in light of the inceptions, the so-called cathartic horoscopes of this mysterious astrologer, but it would have been even more complicated. So what I'm going to talk about is the corpus of 10 5th century horoscopes that are extant in various Greek and Arabic manuscripts and sources. So these are scattered horoscopes, in partly surviving in the compendium of Parcus that Dorian spoke about, in other Byzantine manuscripts, and there are some cases that are only extant in Arabic translations in Al-Kasrani's 9th century interrogation compendium, preserving a lot of interesting sources that you can't have access to because it is not edited nor translated into any human languages. Sorry, any modern languages. So the common point of these horoscopes is that these were all cast for the years between 474 and 487, and already David Pingree in the 70s wrote an article about some of these horoscopes, and also some additional nativities, so birth horoscopes for the same era. And he had a theory about an astrologer who worked for the Byzantine or the Roman Emperor Zeno, who was reigning at this time. And this astrologer, according to Pingree, worked for this emperor because some inceptions and some nativities, these nativities are related to the political opponents and other figures of Zeno's times, mainly usurpers and the personal enemies of the astrologer on the payroll of opposite figures. So this is why at least some of these horoscopes should be attributed to Zeno's astrologer. But there are some other horoscopes for the same era. So this is how the final count is 10 that survived, which are not strictly political. So some of them are loosely political, some of them are not political at all. But the time frame is the same types of techniques are used in the astronomical data, using Ptolemy's handy tables for calculations, and there are a lot of other features that prove that they belonged to the casebook of the same astrologer. And as I said, that these are all inceptions, catharchai, which basically is the same word that was translated into Arabic like ibtida, which Petra talked about recently. So these are the horoscopes I would like to talk about. And the importance of these horoscopes is that these are horoscopes with interpretations. And this is, in certain respects, it is a unique collection, because normally what we have of ancient horoscopes are mostly diagrams or astronomical data, and about, let's say about 1/3 of these, or 1/2 or 1/3 of these horoscopes have interpretations, but the majority of these horoscopes with interpretation appear in natal works of astrologers illustrating certain points. So these are not complete horoscopes. I would say that if we look for complete horoscopes, we will find maybe a handful of ones, like the horoscope of the Emperor Hadrian, originally devised by Antigonus of Nicaea, or from the later times we have horoscopes like the horoscope of the Byzantine Emperor Constantine VIII, which is as far as I remember, the 9th century CE. So these are complete horoscopes, but these are nativities. But you know, the difference between nativities and inceptions is that nativities are too general. So a life of a human is too long. And of course, certain aspects are being analyzed, but this is not as fine-tuned as an inception can be, which is related to one certain problem or one certain question. And from inceptions having interpretation, this is virtually the only collection before the later Arabic collections of Al-Saimari and Al-Kasrani and others who I don't know. So this is why this material is unique. And through this corpus, I would like to speak about some features of astrological work in action. Yeah. So inceptions. When we talk about inceptions, and some of these things were mentioned in Dorian's lecture, we can make basically two main versions of inceptions. I guess that you see that these two rectangulars are not equal in size, although events that are on the left and choices that are on the right are like mirrors of each other, because when we come to events, we have a moment, we have the celestial constellation configuration related to that, and we draw information out of this horoscope. When we come to choices, we do the opposite. So we have an idea that we would like to, launch a fantastically lucrative business, and we choose a nice configuration from a reasonable time frame to accomplish this noble goal. And we just do exactly the opposite of, or the mirror the version of interpreting events, which is for seeking information. But still, there is a difference between the weight of these two applications, because there are some events that do not have the mirrors in the form of choices. For example, you don't really want to choose an election, let's say an election for unwanted occurrences like illness or theft or your slave running away. I hope that you don't have slaves, but they did. Or there are some cases where these things happen spontaneously, like you receive news and letters, so you can choose the time when you get these news. So that's why this rectangle on the right is smaller. But these are the main two main versions of the inceptions, and both are exemplified in this corpus. But I would like to go a little bit further. This is also somehow related to Dorian's lecture, that what I said is, if in the case of events, we have a time, an occurrence, But what is this occurrence? This is the question. So sometimes we can see something happening. For example, I know that my neighbor started to build up his house, and I say, oh yeah, okay. I look at the timing, and I say, oh, this house will never be completed. This is basically solid because I can see when the construction works begin. But for example, running away or theft cannot be timed so precisely. So as it seems that from the very beginnings, let's say at least the 1st century CE, astrologers developed some substitutional solutions, and the first great substitutional solution was the discovery of an occurrence. In some ways, even the receiving a letter can be seen as a discovery of an occurrence, because normally when you want to know, to read between the lines of a letter, you should go back to the original composition time. But of course it is impossible, so the only available timing is when you open the letter and you face with the reality. But sometimes even this discovery is not available either. Sometimes the reason is very simply that there is no event to be timed. Like when I would like to be sure that my friend is a friend, is not an enemy, then I've got no time for that. So I can't find a suitable horoscope. So as a second grade substitution, there was, and that was the last measure, I guess, consultation with the astrologer. And we can see, Dorian already showed us a source from Dorotheus, where Dorotheus writes about running wife, so wife running away, where the discovery was the case. But we will see that in quite early sources, also the inquiry about or the consultation about some occurrences can substitute the original events. And as time passed, and I don't really want to go into details, this type of astrology, the inquiries, or let's say that Masail interrogations, eventually absorbed event astrology, with very few exceptions, like falling ill, which is also a specialized usage of event astrology, events in the form of medical astrology. So when we go back to the inceptions, these 5th century inceptions, we can see some examples of choices, events, and inquiries also. For example, for choices, we have a handful of coronations of usurpers, namely Basiliscus and Leontius, who challenged Zeno but failed. Our astrologer says that these choices were devised by astrologers of the opposing party. We might believe him or might not. We can see some events like receiving a letter, or a man embarking on a ship and traveling from Caesarea to Constantinople, and also inquiries when, for example, certain linen piece of clothes of a slave girl was stolen. We don't know exactly what it was, and we are looking for the identity of the thief. Or investors are waiting for their ships to arrive, but these ships haven't arrived, and they would like to know about the whereabouts of the ships, whether they will have profit or loss. So these are the main examples. There are some, so we are not told what sort of inceptions they are, especially as there was no expression for choices and events in contemporary astrology. For inquiries, they used L06, which is already used in the pseudo-hermetic text, the mystical method that Dorian referred to, which should be based on philological arguments, based on sample earlier than 300 CE, because it mentions crucifixion that was abolished during the reign of Constantine the Great. So the next step I would like to talk about is that and choices will be put away now, I would just concentrate on events and inquiries, that what sort of information do we expect the astrologer to give us? If I asked you, you would say, oh, please tell me that I don't know. Yeah? But surprisingly, they seem to, at least this astrologer, and I'm pretty sure that the others as well, devoted surprisingly much space to confirming the noun. So telling us basically what we already know. So we should ask the question that why is it so important, and I guess after giving you some examples, I will try to give an answer to this. There is one question that who stole the linen cloth? In this case, for example, the astrologer devotes a considerable space to telling us that the inquiry is about theft. The owner was a humble or slave woman, and the item was old and worn out. You might ask the question why someone wants to steal a worn out piece of clothes. Okay, so use your imagination. The other case is, will the small lion given as a gift be tamed? We know that this was given as a gift from a designated consul to a consul. My reconstruction is that it was a gift from the Ostrogothic king Theodoric to the Emperor Zeno himself, and actually the question is answered, but most of this inception is about confirming that the gift is a lion and not an ostrich, and it will be transported from Alexandria by a ship and not by, I don't know, cargo airlines or something like that. Yeah. So going back to the question that why to devote so much space to these things that we already know. My theory is that the underlying notion is that astrology is describing reality, both unknown and known. So it should be able to describe also known reality. Now, what is the use of this? If we see that the correlation between the celestial signs and their earthly counterparts is weak, then we are entitled to doubt whether the time of the inception is reliable, or whether our client is honest when he's presenting or she is presenting his or her case to us. On the other hand, if the astrologer can prove that something to the client that the client already knows, that in this case the client will be no doubt impressed, and in this way even the minor lapses or mistakes of the astrologer in the interpretation might be forgiven, if you understand me. So I guess that these are the most important things. And let me, related to this, let me talk briefly about the model behind the working method of astrology. As you all know, I guess, there are basically two major models how astrology is taught to operate. One is indication, and the other model, causation and indication at the same time. Now, I don't really want to go into this quarrel whether this or that is more valid, but we see that the indication is in both of the models. So what we see basically is that the signs are constituent parts of a formal language that are translated by the astrologer into the human language of action, happening, occurrences. So what happens on the earth, and while research often highlights that it is a form of a conditional, like if P, then Q, it looks like astrology is a more sophisticated language than this. And in this language, we can discern some features of natural human languages. And I would like to appeal to one example, and this example would be metonymy. You know, metonymy is based on relations between two concepts by space or time or in this way. And in Jeffrey's lecture, we heard that in Japanese astrology, sometimes in some cases, the fifth house was interpreted as giving indication not to children, but in dharma households into disciplines, which is a prime example of how this metonymy works in translations. So I hope that I'm not running out of time. Yes, okay, let's go on. So this is also a feature of astrological translation, when the astrologer basically translates the celestial signs into worldly expressions. Now the next question is, what makes a successful astrologer? And we are talking about an astrologer in action. So what makes a successful astrologer? Practicing astrologers might have their own answers to this. I would like to examine this question through the horoscopes of this anonymous astrologer. Of course, this is a commonplace that you need to be familiar with the craft, with the basic concepts, conditions, and the literature. When it comes to inceptions, the first and foremost source is going to be Dorotheus, who everybody knows, so it's not a big surprise. But on the other hand, what you need is a big amount of creativity. Now, in the rest of my lecture, I would like to speak about this point, is how creativity was employed in these horoscopes, and I will have 5 different areas where this creativity was applied. So the first thing is, I told you that the model of astrological indication is basically, if we just boil it down to the very bones, if P then Q. But it also has the feature that P can mean many Qs, or we can also say that many P's can mean the same Q. The first version can be called polysemy, which means that a word or a sign has many meanings. And the second one can be called, following linguistic model, synonymy, which is different signs can point to the same reality. Now, we can see that our astrologer exploited this in a very creative way. For example, in a case where a ship owner is asking about a ship that hasn't arrived in Athens, the astrologer discovers that the lot of fortune is in the 12th house or the 12th place, and the 12th place means something like fear, theft, loss, damages, but also long trips or being exiled, and also animals and slaves. So we have a full bunch of meanings. Now, our astrologer tells us that in this very case, the lot of fortune meant three things. At the beginning, he also considers slaves, but then abandons this idea without noticing. A foreign trip, dangers and damage, and animals as cargo. And he uses synonymous signs to confirm these views. So that are not confirmed by synonymous signs are just disregarded. So for the foreign trip, he says that the lords of the ascendant and the moon are cadent, and whenever we talk about being away from home, being exiled on foreign trips, cadency is always highlighted. And of course, the ascendant and the moon are very, very important horoscopic factors. When it comes to confirming the dangers and the damage, he says that the malefics, Saturn and Mars, are in the ascendant. And when it comes to the animals, he says that the ascendant is in an animal-shaped sign. Actually, the ascendant was Leo. He later tells us that the animals being carried were camels. So not exactly Leos, but we don't have a camel for it's not available for a zodiacal sign. Yeah. Let's see, group 2, creating alternatives. Normally, our astrologer goes through the, not in fixed order, through the important astrological factors, the ascendant, the moon, the sun, their lords, the malefics, the benefics, and so on. But sometimes it just doesn't really allow him to reach the necessary conclusions. So what can we do this time? We can proliferate. We can multiply planetary placements by using the planet's 12 parts, these dodecatemuria. To be short, these 12 parts are usually understood as subdivisions of zodiacal signs into 12 equal portions, and these micro portions or micro signs are in the same. So they are also considered to be signs. The first micro sign is the same as the original sign, and they just follow each other in the zodiacal order. So by using these 12 parts, we can make a brand new horoscope where we might find some clues for the right interpretation. And for example, to this question related to the small lion, he tells us that in the horoscope find their 12 parts in an animal-shaped zodiacal signs. These are not only Leo, but Taurus and Sagittarius. I mean, the back part of Sagittarius, that is basically a horse. So the alignment is not perfect, but this is used as a proof. Also, we can make like alternative horoscopes. When you meet solar revolutions, for example, of nativities, these are alternatives. In the Hellenistic astrology and also early Arabic astrology, they often used the horoscopes cast for the time, the second day and sixth day after the original horoscope. That was misleadingly, a bit misleadingly for us, called third days and seventh days, because the 0th day is the first day, if you understand that. And on these days, the position of the moon and her separations and applications were re-evaluated. And in this case, for example, our astrologer tells us that the small lion will be tamed, so it's going to be okay, and will grow up among humans because the third day and the 7th-day moon both are approaching the benefic planets. Just a remark, in this horoscope, he made a mistake in the calculation. He used Ptolemy's tables, but he used an erroneous position of the 10th degree instead of the 13th degree that he should have used. So with Ptolemaic method, his judgment doesn't really work. But curiously, if you do the recomputation with modern models, it will work again. So it's really interesting, I guess. Okay, now let's see number 3. A good astrologer knows not only the signs, the houses, the aspects, and things like that, but also exotic tools. Yeah? These exotic tools can, of course, what you call exotic is it depends on your taste, but we can agree that there are some uncommon classifications of the zodiacal signs, and these there are various ones like fertile, barren signs, vocal signs, and things like that. In this case, which is about a ship that its owner is waiting for to arrive in Smyrna. The astrologer tells us that the cargo consisted of some winged animals, and they were sparrows basically, because the ascendant and the lot of fortune were in winged zodiacal signs. The winged zodiacal signs include the Virgo and the Sagittarius. The Virgo because in the constellation the Virgo is often depicted with 2 wings, and in many cases the cloak of the Sagittarius is also understood as wings, or the so-called Paranatelonta, which are the co-rising constellations. These are extra zodiacal constellations, and sometimes the same constellation can have different names rooted in different cultures or different streams of tradition. And our astrologer tells us that the ship carried medical equipment, which it did, because with the moon was co-rising Asclepius, the constellation depicting the god of medicine. Now, Asclepius is actually the same constellation as Ophiuchus. Number 4, appealing to evocative conditions. In astrology, we have a handful of conditions that have evocative names. They existed already in the Hellenistic times, and Arabic astrologers like Mashallah or Salim Bishr or Abu Mashar invented or added many more very figurative conditions to this, especially to be used for horary or interrogational astrology. There is a case, which is the first one in this collection, which is about the letter's arrival. Now, we don't know anything about the whereabouts or the circumstances of this letter. The astrologer only tells us that these were the positions. This and this and this and this made me think that the letter will contain good news, but it turned out that it contained bad news. And he says, and I examined the horoscope again, and I discovered that, yeah, there is Antigonus's enclosure, so the enclosure as described by Antigonus, and also the intervention as described by Dorotheus. Now, because this can be dated, so we know exactly the day and the hour of this horoscope, and we also know that this time happened the siege of Constantinople by Theodoric the king, who wanted to put the emperor under pressure to give him money, basically, and which was later averted by Zeno offering Theodoric money, and also a suggestion that he should go to Italy and expel Odoacer, who was a usurper in the throne of the Western Roman Empire. That was the end of the Western Roman Empire, so there was no other emperor appointed, not even Theodoric, who did his task. What made me think that this is the case, this blockade is the case? Because we are told that one of the problems is, and this is the enclosure, that the Lord of the Ascendant and other other relevant indicators are fully enclosed by the malefic planets. Now, this enclosing means that if we look at the chart, maybe, we can see that there are the planets, and we can see that they are delimited by the malefics, or they are delimited by the aspectual points of the malefics. Is it possible that the astrologer is referring to Constantinople and the emperor being besieged by Theodoric? It's an option. Or we are also told that we see the intervention as per Dorotheus, that the Lord of the Ascendant, which is Venus, has no command on a lot of relevant indicators because the sun is between them, so because of the sun's intervention. Is it possible that the besieged emperor cannot command his auxiliary armies to expel the Theodoric or something? So we don't know, but these are metonymic, these translations of these conditions that are seen in the sky. And for the last thing, an astrologer who publishes his casebook can always doctor the details in hindsight. And we can be sure that when we read horoscope collections from Antigonus, 2nd century, to Jerome Cardan, say 16th century or even beyond, that there was some airbrushing in the details to make. I wouldn't say that is lying, but it's. Thank you. But that was making things more round. Yes, more round, more fitting, or even discovering something in hindsight that. Yeah, the signs were there, but I wasn't able to discover them and interpret them in that way. But you see that they are there. Yeah, and of course some aspects of astrology give a rich inventory tools for us for this endeavor. Anyways, in this case, which I would like to show you, and this is going to be the last one. This is this man's. This is an event, a man's adventurous journey from Caesarea to Constantinople, where we can read a sort of an itinerary that happened to him, things after things. So we learned that after some pleasure trip. There was some delay and they got into a storm where the parts of the ship were damaged, and there was also some violence on board. So maybe there was a sort of people hitting each other on the board because of I don't know. But he was successful enough to escape from dangers with intact body. But then this damaged ship just ran ashore in Abydos, and of course everybody had to leave the ship. And there he had an affair with a woman. We don't learn any more details because somehow mysteriously this part of the Bacchus text is missing. Yeah, but this is how to be the time when you need to stop. Yeah, and then they changed ships, and finally he was able to arrive in Constantinople successfully. Now, these indications are, so he says that this happened because this and that that happened because this and that. So we are given full explanation of all these events, but it's like always different horoscopic factors used. So for the delay and the storm, Moon is used. For the damage and violence, Mars is used. Then the Moon and the Mars come back from the timing of the arrival. Jupiter is used from a certain aspect because of being a benefic for the successful escape. Then because of being in bicorporeal signs, it indicates that ships were changed. It's all nice, but no astrologer would ever be able to put things into this sequence just looking at the chart. So it's also a sort of a confirmation, but it's not confirmation of the noun beforehand, but a confirmation of the noun afterwards. So that's it. Thank you very much. Now, please ask.
Very short questions. Are there any schemes, or is it only text, the original source? Are the diagrams, schemes, grounds?
Yeah, so you mean that if I have I have a full edition and translation of the cases, which will be available very soon, because I will upload it on my academia.edu page. This is So the whole edition of this case book is my PhD thesis. So it will be available for you and everybody.
Yeah. But is it only text? The original source, is it only text with the interpretations and so on? Are there also data?
Yes, yeah,
Specific
no,
data?
no. These are horoscopes, so astronomical data and the interpretation. In some cases, also the diagram is attached.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, those charts are in Greek horoscopes also, so you can, before Levente puts up his thesis, you can find the information, right, in Greek horoscopes for these.
Yeah,
charts
exactly.
that we discussed today.
Actually, yes, in Greek horoscopes by Neugebauer and van Heusen, 8 of these horoscopes are available,
Right.
with handwritten diagrams.
Yeah.
In many cases, I made changes in the paradoxes because I inspected the manuscripts, all of the manuscripts.
Yeah, but if you need to see the data, you know, you can find it. It's available.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, anyway, that was the lovely presentation.
Thank you very much.
It was really good, and I think this is exactly what astrologers do. I mean, this is how we work.
Yeah.
This is how we come to these judgments about the charts that we're asked to present. So, you know, I was reminded when you were talking about, you said there was a mistake in the calculation.
Yes.
Yeah. I was reminded of Jeffrey Cornelius's, I don't know if it's a whole chapter or just a section in his book, The Moment of Astrology, where he talks about giving correct information and analysis from a chart that is the wrong date, was wrongly cast. And this, I think, is an example of that. But I also think this again brings out that idea of this divinatory mode that's operating when astrologers are actually doing astrology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We should accept the fact, I guess, that this is not hard science.
No.
So this is not about application hard rules without creativity. It's always interpretation.
Yes.
And a lot of factors must be put together. And it's not just astrology. I guess a political commentator basically do the same, or even doctors when they diagnose there. So there is always a divinatory aspect of it. And of course, it is favored to have precise data, but outcome does not always depend on precision.
Yes, yes. People don't really want to talk about that, but it happens. Yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
No, I was fascinated by the fact that you said you could add these 2 more horoscopes because they were the same style, the same terminology. They obviously were written by the same man.
Yes.
It's interesting that there should be, and that the character of the astrologer should come through what he writes or how he interprets. And I wonder whether you can contrast that to another set of horoscopes, which were obviously written, they're still anonymous, but they're obviously written by a different astrologer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But do you mean a concrete set of horoscopes?
Well, you can say, I mean, this doesn't belong to this group because it's got the astrologer has a different special.
Yeah, but it is a difficult question because in some cases I believe that astrologers reuse the horoscopes of their predecessors. For example, when someone studies the natal works of Masha'Allah and Al-Khayat, the second is survives also in the Arabic, unstudied Arabic original, but the first one only in Latin translation. They seem to reuse Dorotheus's cases, and they add some more cases that are from the same era as this one, and I speculate that they might have been cast by the same astrologer. Yeah, but if it comes to natal astrology, where different points are illustrated with examples, then we won't see necessarily the character of the astrologer coming through. So basically, just to give a very short example, the use of triplicity rulers in the question of prosperity, which is described both by Dorotheus or Valens, we can't really see the different aspects, how they were used by different astrologers, unfortunately.
But these are no questions. These are rather two short remarks. The first one, what you said about an astrologer, what he's doing and how he is doing it and how he becomes successful. I think this is true for many other prognostic practitioners too, or for diviners doing, for example, those particularly doing geomancy, for example, but also probably with other things. This is just one remark, and the other is you said astrology is more elaborated than if P than Q. Yeah, at least if we have P and O and then Q, that's what I have in the double argument tables for astrology.
Exactly,
so,
exactly, exactly. So my idea is basically that it is not just a set of rules, but it's also a sort of sophisticated formal language that should be studied through as languages, formal or natural languages are studied. Thank you very much.